Always loved the woods, the quiet, the animals. It's my thing. But one day, I stumble onto something that makes me question everything. It starts innocent, like any other day. I'm doing my rounds in Yellowstone, checking on things. And then, in the distance, I hear gunshots. That's weird. This isn't hunting season. So, I decide to investigate. Quietly, like. No need to be a hero, right? As I get closer, I see them. A bunch of guys, heavily armed, not looking like your typical nature lovers. I hide behind some trees, trying to figure out what's going on. And that's when I see it. They're poachers. Poaching in a national park, of all places. They've got traps, guns, the whole illegal shebang. And they're after the endangered stuff, you know? Like, what kind of sicko goes after animals that are barely hanging on? I watch them from my hiding spot, and my blood starts boiling. I'm not one for confrontations, but I can't let this slide. These guys are destroying what I've dedicated my life to protect. So, I radio for backup. It's just me against a bunch of armed poachers. But hey, it's my duty, right? Backup takes forever, it feels like. Meanwhile, these guys are like vultures, picking off the defenseless wildlife. I can't just sit there and watch. So, I decide to follow them, document everything I see. Get the evidence, you know? I'm like a ranger spy or something. Night falls, and it gets real creepy. I'm tracking these poachers through the dark, trying to stay hidden. But they're pros. They know these woods better than most. I'm thinking, this is a bad idea, really bad. Suddenly, I step on a twig, loud as thunder in the silence. They freeze. I freeze. We're all frozen. Then, they start looking around. My heart's pounding like a drum. I swear they can hear it. I manage to slip away, but now they're on edge. I keep following, watching their every move. It's like a twisted game of hide and seek. And then, I witness something that chills me to the bone. They're not just poaching for money. They're enjoying it, like some sick game. One of them kills a rare bird, then laughs about it. I want to puke. These guys aren't just in it for the profit. They're sadistic. And now, I'm dealing with a whole new level of danger. They're ruthless, unpredictable. Backup finally arrives, but these poachers are smart. They sense they're being hunted, turn the tables. Suddenly, I'm the one being stalked. It's like they can smell fear. We play this cat and mouse game for days. I'm exhausted, scared. I can't shake them. They're always there, just out of sight. I'm questioning everything, my job, my choices. All for some stupid animals that they see as nothing more than targets. One night, it gets real bad. They find me, surround me. I'm trapped. I'm thinking, this is it. This is where I become another statistic. But then, out of nowhere, backup arrives. Sirens blaring, lights flashing. They scatter like roaches when you turn the lights on. We catch a couple of them, but not all. It's not enough. The damage is done. The animals are dead, and I'm left with this haunting feeling. These guys are still out there, and they know my face. Every rustle in the woods, every shadow, I'm on edge. I thought I was protecting nature, but it turns out, nature can be a pretty terrifying place when you're up against the worst predator of all, humans. It was just another day in Denali. I led a group of tourists through the vast wilderness, the air crisp and the landscape stretching endlessly. The tourists were a diverse bunch, cameras dangling from their necks, ready to capture the beauty of the Alaskan wilderness. As the tour progressed, I noticed something odd about this group. Whispers exchanged between them, furtive glances that felt heavier than the imposing mountains around us. My instincts, finely tuned from years in the wild, started to send warning signals. We reached an isolated spot, surrounded by the majesty of nature. The tourists, seemingly enamored by the scenery, began peeling away from the group. Unease settled in, a discomfort I couldn't quite put into words. One of them, a man with a disarming smile, approached me. His questions shifted from the usual inquiries about wildlife to probing about the park's security measures, the paths less traveled. Red flags waved in my mind, but I dismissed them as paranoia. As we ventured deeper into the wilderness, their intentions became clearer. They weren't here for the breathtaking views or the serenity. They sought something more sinister. The group splintered, disappearing into the trees, leaving me with a sinking feeling of impending danger. I radioed for assistance, my voice betraying the anxiety I couldn't articulate. The response crackled through the radio, a lifeline in the vast expanse, yet I couldn't shake the feeling that time was slipping away. The tourists circled back, their smiles now replaced by something cold and calculating. The disarming man revealed a knife, glinting ominously in the muted sunlight. Panic surged through me as I fumbled for the radio, desperate to relay the escalating threat. They closed in, taunting with vague threats, their motives unclear but undeniably malevolent. The picturesque landscape, once a source of solace, became a backdrop for a nightmare unfolding in slow motion. I stumbled backward, the wild beauty of Denali now a cruel juxtaposition to the impending violence. My radio crackled to life, the distant voice offering reassurance, but the cold eyes of the tourists conveyed a different reality. A scuffle ensued, adrenaline blurring the line between survival and surrender. The tourists, no longer harmless sightseers, revealed a dark intent. The struggle played out against the stunning canvas of Denali, a surreal clash of beauty and brutality. Just when it seemed all was lost, the distant roar of approaching assistance echoed through the wilderness. The tourists, sensing the encroaching danger, fled into the trees, leaving behind the haunting echoes of their sinister plot. I was patrolling through the thick woods of the Olympic National Forest. My boots crushed fallen leaves beneath me, creating a rhythmic crunch that seemed to echo in the dense silence. The towering trees cast eerie shadows in the fading daylight, and the air was thick with the scent of damp moss. I stumbled upon an overgrown path, barely visible beneath the encroaching foliage. Intrigued, I decided to follow it, my flashlight cutting through the gathering darkness. As I ventured deeper, the woods became denser, and the path narrower until it almost disappeared. Suddenly, I saw a flicker of light through the trees. Cautiously, I approached, my heart pounding. Amid the wilderness, I found a small clearing with the remnants of a makeshift shelter. Tattered blankets clung to branches, forming a haphazard tent. My flashlight revealed scattered belongings, empty cans, worn-out clothes, and a cracked mirror reflecting my puzzled expression. Something caught my eye, a weathered journal lying on a makeshift table. I flipped through its pages, uncovering the desperate musings of a person on the fringes of society. The writer spoke of isolation, of the forest becoming both refuge and prison. Each page revealed a descent into paranoia, a haunting narrative etched in shaky handwriting. As I delved further into the journal, a twig snapped behind me. I spun around, my flashlight revealing a figure standing in the shadows. A man, unkempt and wild-eyed, stared back at me. His gaze held a mix of fear and desperation, mirroring the sentiments penned in the journal. We stood frozen, the only sounds being our labored breaths and the rustling leaves in the wind. The man's lips parted, revealing a set of yellow teeth. "You weren't supposed to find me," he muttered, his voice a strained whisper. I fumbled for words, unsure if I was dealing with a harmless squatter or someone more sinister. In the dim light, I noticed scars on his hands, remnants of a life unknown to me. The tension thickened, and the forest seemed to close in around us. The man took a step forward, and I, paralyzed by the uncertainty of the situation, couldn't decide whether to retreat or stand my ground. As our eyes locked, a chilling realization crept over me. This encounter wasn't just about discovering a squatter, it was about confronting the haunting shadows of a troubled soul, tangled in a web of isolation and fear. The forest, once a sanctuary, had transformed into a battleground of secrets and survival. The man's eyes reflected a primal instinct, a fight-or-flight response that mirrored my own. In that moment, beneath the towering trees of the Olympic National Forest, we were two strangers locked in a silent struggle, each uncertain of the other's intentions. The journal's words echoed in my mind, a reminder that sometimes the true horror lies not in the supernatural, but in the very real and complex depths of human existence. I'm used to dealing with gators, maybe the occasional lost camper, but this was something else. Got a tip about poachers, folks messing around where they shouldn't be. So, I'm trudging through the muck, trying not to think about the things that could be lurking beneath the water. Story of my life, really, chasing after folks with no respect for the rules. Sun setting, casting eerie shadows. I catch a glimpse of flickering lights in the distance, campfire. Figured I'd give these poachers a stern talking to. Maybe they're just lost, right? Yeah, wishful thinking. As I get closer, I see their setup. Tents, equipment, like they've been here a while. Red flags all over. They hear me coming, and suddenly, it's quiet. Too quiet. I call out, identifying myself as a ranger, and that's when things take a turn. They step into the firelight, 3 of them. Big guys, grizzled, wearing gear like they're on some military op. My gut tightens. Poachers don't usually dress like they're storming a compound. I ask them what they're doing. They laugh. Say they're just fishing. But I know fishing, and this ain't it. There's a tension in the air, and it's not just the humidity. I tell them to pack up and leave, thinking it'll be that easy. One guy, the leader, he steps forward. Ice cold, like he's sizing me up. Then he says, "We ain't going anywhere, Ranger." And that's when I see it, the rifles leaning against the trees. My stomach drops. They're not here for fish, they're here for something else. Probably illegal. I tell them they're under arrest, but they just laugh again. I reach for my radio, but one of them knocks it out of my hand. Things are escalating, and I'm feeling way out of my depth. Suddenly, they surround me, and I'm thinking, this is it. This is how it ends, in the damn Everglades, with these guys. I try to reason with them, but it's like talking to brick walls. They're not scared of me, they're enjoying this. Then, out of nowhere, they grab me. Tie me up. I'm thinking, what the hell have I walked into? They start telling me about their operation, smuggling, illegal wildlife trade, the works. I'm just a ranger, man. I signed up for gators and lost hikers, not this. They leave me there, bound, helpless. Night falls, and the swamp sounds take on a different tone. I'm praying someone stumbles upon us, but it's a vast, unforgiving place. Hours pass, and I'm losing hope. Suddenly, headlights cut through the darkness. I'm thinking backup has arrived, but no. It's a boat, theirs. They're loading it up, leaving me tied to a tree. They get in, give me this sinister grin, and disappear into the black waters. I manage to free myself eventually, but the damage is done. I radio for help, report the whole mess. They investigate, find traces of their operation, but the poachers? Like ghosts. I used to work as a ranger at Yosemite National Park. It was quiet most nights, just the sounds of nature and the occasional crackle of a distant campfire. This one time, though, things took a turn. There was this lone camper, a guy, set up at a remote site near Mirror Lake. Looked harmless enough, just a regular dude enjoying the outdoors. I spotted him during my rounds, just sitting by the fire, staring into the flames. No big deal, people do that. But something felt off. I couldn't put my finger on it, so I continued my patrol, keeping an eye out. The next day, I saw him again, this time closer to the trail. He greeted me with a nod, smiled, said his name was Mark. Seemed friendly, but I felt this chill in the air. As if something was off script, but I couldn't point to what. I tried to shake it off, thinking maybe it was just a long day. Days passed, and I kept crossing paths with Mark. He'd always give me that smile, but there was this intensity in his eyes. Like he was watching every move I made. I started avoiding him, sticking to the well-lit areas, but he'd always pop up. It was unnerving, this constant feeling of being observed. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, I noticed him following me. I quickened my pace, heart pounding, hoping it was just a coincidence. I took a detour through the trees, but he stayed right behind. Panic set in. My radio seemed too far away, useless. I reached the campground, thinking safety was within reach. But then I realized I was alone, no other campers around. The fire pit crackled, casting eerie shadows. Mark stepped into the light, that smile never leaving his face. He started talking, saying things that made my blood run cold. He knew details about me, personal stuff. How did he know? The realization hit me. He had been stalking me, studying my routine. I was trapped, and fear gripped me. I didn't want to show it, but my hands trembled as I radioed for backup. Mark moved closer, his voice now a low whisper. He spoke of some twisted obsession, how I was meant to be a part of his messed up plan. I scanned the area for help, but the darkness swallowed everything. My only hope was the response from my fellow rangers on the radio. Time crawled as I tried to keep Mark engaged, the radio crackling with static. He circled, his words growing darker. I felt the weight of isolation, the forest becoming a labyrinth of shadows. Just as despair crept in, the radio squawked to life. Backup was on the way. I held onto that glimmer of hope, trying not to let Mark see my relief. He retreated into the darkness, disappearing like a ghost. My fellow rangers arrived, and we combed the area, but he was gone. Vanished into the night, leaving behind a campground tainted by fear. Months later, I left that job. The woods that once felt like home now held echoes of that encounter. Mark was never found. I'm a ranger up in the Adirondacks, right? Got my routine patrols, keeping an eye on things. One day, deep in the woods, I come across this camp. Looks like someone's been living off the grid, survivalist style. I figure, okay, People do that sometimes, no big deal. But the air, it's heavy with something off. Something not right. I glance around, trees standing tall and silent, like they're holding their breath. It's weird, but I push it aside. I've seen plenty of eccentric hermit types in these parts. As I get closer to the camp, though, things start getting eerie. There's this smell, like burnt offerings or something. And then I see it, a circle of stones, blackened, like there have been some serious fires. Not your typical camper stuff. I'm thinking, maybe this person is just into some weird survival rituals, right? But then I notice these markings on the trees. Symbols, almost like warnings. It's unsettling, sends a shiver down my spine. My gut tells me to turn back, but duty calls. In the middle of the camp, there's this old, beat-up tent. It's flapping in the wind, like it's whispering secrets. I get closer, unzip the thing, and that's when I see it, a wall covered in photographs. Faces, people, but their eyes, there's something off. Like they're all terrified or something. My heart's racing, and I'm questioning why I didn't just turn back. And then I find this journal. Scribblings, ramblings about darkness and purification. It's giving me the creeps, but I keep reading, trying to make sense of it. The more I flip through, the more I realize this person's not just surviving. They're planning something dark. The writings are filled with ominous rants about cleansing the world. I'm thinking, this is some real crazy stuff. I decide to snap a few pics with my phone. You know, evidence. But as I'm doing that, I hear footsteps behind me. Cold sweat breaks out on my forehead. I slowly turn, and there he is, the survivalist. Dressed in rags, eyes wide, staring at me. I try to play it cool, like, hey, just checking things out, you know? But he's not buying it. His eyes, they're not just wide, they're angry. He starts muttering something about trespassing and how I'm not supposed to be here. I'm thinking, okay, calm down, buddy. I'll leave, no harm done. But he's not having it. He reaches into his tattered backpack, and that's when I see it, a glint of metal. I realize he's armed, and not with a hunting rifle. My heart's pounding, and I'm slowly backing away. He starts talking about secrets and how I've seen too much. I'm thinking, this is it, isn't it? This is where I become one of those faces on his creepy wall. I manage to break into a run, crashing through the trees like a madman. I can hear him shouting behind me, something about silence and sacrifice. I don't look back until I'm far from that camp, and when I do, he's just standing there, watching. I radio for backup, trying to explain what I found, but my words come out all jumbled. I just keep thinking about those photographs, those eyes. It's like I stumbled upon some twisted cult, but it's just one guy, out there in the woods, convinced he's doing something righteous. Backup arrives, but the survivalist is long gone. They search the area, find the camp, the symbols, but no trace of him. It's like he vanished into thin air. Got my beat in the Great Smoky Mountains, doing my rounds and all. Beautiful place, you'd think, but let me tell you, it's got its dark corners. One day, I'm wandering off the marked trail, feeling adventurous. The forest is thick, trees like old guardians keeping their secrets. Something in the air feels off, like a distant hum of unease. I shake it off, thinking it's just my imagination playing tricks. As I go deeper, I stumble upon this hidden grove. There's a weird energy, like electricity buzzing in the air. And that's when I see them, a group of people, dressed in hooded robes, standing around this makeshift altar. My first thought is, what in the world? My second, I should get out of here. But curiosity, it's a powerful thing. I crouch behind a tree, peeking through the leaves. They're doing some kind of ritual, chanting in a language I can't understand. The grove is adorned with symbols, like a language of its own. It's creepy, but I figure maybe it's just some weird art project. Then, they bring out this figure, bound, gagged, scared out of their mind. My heart's pounding, and I'm thinking, this is not an art project. They start doing things, unspeakable things, and I'm paralyzed with horror. I should have run, radioed for help, but fear, it's got this grip on me. I recognize the figure. It's someone from the nearby town, missing for weeks. Panic sets in, but I can't look away. These cultists, they're smiling, reveling in something sickening. And I'm thinking, I need to expose them, bring them to justice. As they finish their ritual, I start sneaking back, careful not to make a sound. My hands are shaking as I radio for backup. I explain what I've witnessed, the location, everything. Dispatch tells me they're sending help, but it'll take time. So, I go back, thinking I'll wait, keep an eye on those cultists. But they're gone, vanished like ghosts. I'm left standing in that grove, feeling the weight of what I've seen. I can't get the image out of my head, the rituals, the terrified victim. As I wait for backup, I notice symbols carved into the trees, warnings, maybe. The cult's way of saying, we know you are here. Fear gnaws at me. What if they come after me? What if they're watching? Backup arrives, and we search the grove, find remnants of their ritual. But no cultists, no victim. It's like they were never there. I try to explain, but words fumble out, and I feel this sense of helplessness. Days pass, and I'm haunted by that grove. I start noticing hooded figures in the shadows, but every time I turn, they're gone. Sleep eludes me, nightmares taunt me. The cult, it's like a phantom, lurking in the periphery of my reality. I try telling others, but they dismiss it as stress, as trauma. I question my own sanity. Maybe it was a hallucination, a twisted dream in the daylight. But deep down, I know what I saw, and it's etched into my soul like a scar. Now, every rustle in the trees, every whisper of the wind, it echoes with that cult's chant. I'm a ranger, sworn to protect these woods, but how do you protect against something that hides in the shadows, something that feels like a nightmare you can't wake up from? I'm doing my rounds through the woods, minding my own business, when I hear it. Distant gunfire. I'm like, what's that doing here? I follow the sound, thinking maybe it's some hunters or something. But as I get closer, it ain't deer season I'm stumbling into. There they are, a bunch of guys, decked out in camo, guns, the whole militia look. I'm just a ranger. I didn't sign up for this military training exercise nonsense. Now, I'm thinking, do I sneak away? Call for backup? Nah, man. I gotta do my job, right? So, I pull out my radio to report this. Before I can even get a word out, one of them spots me. They freeze, like deer in headlights, then it hits the fan. They start yelling, "Intruder! Intruder!" Like I'm the bad guy. I'm waving my arms, telling them I'm a ranger, just doing my rounds. But these guys, they don't buy it. They surround me, guns pointed my way. I'm thinking, okay, don't panic. Just explain. But they're not having it. Their leader, this burly guy with a beard, he steps forward. Ice-cold eyes, like he's sizing me up. Then he says, "You think you can just stumble upon us, Ranger?" I'm trying to keep my cool, telling them it's a misunderstanding. But he ain't buying that either. They start questioning me, like I'm the enemy spy. I'm telling them about my job, about protecting the park, but they're convinced I'm onto them. This whole time, the woods are silent, except for the tension in the air. Then it gets worse. They disarm me, tie me up, no warning, no chance to explain. Now, I'm just this guy in uniform, helpless, in the middle of nowhere. They're talking about what to do with me, and it's clear they don't plan on letting me go. I'm thinking, this is it, huh? Just doing my job, and now I'm a captive in my own park. Panic sets in, but I'm not about to beg these guys for mercy. They're debating whether to leave me tied up or take me with them. I'm praying for a miracle, like backup showing up or something. Then, a savior, a hiker stumbles upon us. I've never been so relieved to see a stranger. He's like, "What's going on here?" These militia dudes, they try to act normal, say I'm the one causing trouble. But this hiker, he's not buying it. He pulls out his phone, probably ready to call the cops. That's when things shift. The militia guys realize they're in trouble, and quick. They untie me, tell me to get lost, like it was all a big joke. They melt into the woods, disappearing like smoke. I'm left there, shaken, confused, but alive. Worked as a ranger at Acadia. Normal days, just checking trails, helping lost hikers. One day, noticed a guy taking photos near Thunder Hole. Figured he was a photographer, lots around. But something about him felt off. Pictures weren't scenic. People, close-ups, like he was capturing their faces. Too close. Unsettling. Went up to him, asked about his shots. He smiled, polite, said he liked faces. Sounded weird, but not illegal. Let it go, but that uneasy feeling stuck. Saw him again at Jordan Pond. Same deal, snapping shots of people, too close. Got complaints this time, folks feeling watched. Confronted him again, said he was ruining the experience. His eyes, cold, no emotion. Something was off, but couldn't prove anything. Weeks passed, complaints kept coming. Faces, faces, always the faces. Checked his photos online, found a pattern. Faces of visitors, zoomed in, uploaded without consent. Creepy obsession. Reported to superiors, but without solid proof, couldn't do much. Decided to tail him, see if I could catch something. Nightfall, he headed towards Sieur de Monts. Followed at a distance, trees casting shadows. He reached a secluded spot, set up a tripod. Faces, always faces, twisted ankles. Knew I had to stop this. Stepped forward, told him to leave. He smirked, said he found beauty in their expressions. Couldn't take it. Grabbed his camera, deleted the shots. Anger in his eyes. Thought he'd leave, but he lunged. Fight in the darkness, struggled to keep control. Backup radioed in, distant voices. He backed off, muttered threats. Said he'd make me famous, my face plastered on his wall. Radioed for assistance, cuffed him. Felt safer with him detained, but his words lingered. Found his darkroom later, walls covered in faces. Investigation revealed his name, history. Obsession started with art, turned sinister. Faces haunted him. Faces of those he deemed beautiful. A twisted collection. Convicted, but darkness lingered. Faces stayed with me, even after leaving the job. Always wondering if he's out there, seeking new faces, new victims. So I'm this ranger guy, right? Just doing my thing in Petrified Forest National Park, making sure people don't mess with the ancient rocks or get lost in the Badlands. Easy gig, you'd think. One day, though, things take a turn. I'm patrolling my spot these two dudes digging in an area they shouldn't be. I figure they're just looking for souvenirs, like folks do sometimes. But no, these guys are serious. They're talking about some mythical artifact, like it's Indiana Jones or something. I approach them, tell them it's a protected area, no digging allowed. But they're not having it. One guy, older, weathered face, looks me dead in the eyes and says, "We're close." We can't stop now. Close to what? I'm thinking. It's just petrified wood and dust out here. They're convinced there's some ancient treasure, a relic that'll make them rich or famous. I'm like, guys, this is a national park, not a pirate movie. But they don't care. They're obsessed. Talking about curses, lost civilizations, the whole deal. Now, I'm stuck dealing with these treasure hunter wannabes. I call for backup, but it's gonna be a while. Meanwhile, these guys are getting antsy, digging faster, muttering about destiny and fortune. I'm trying to reason with them, telling them they're breaking the law, ruining the park, but they're not listening. They're so deep into their fantasy, it's like they've forgotten where they are. As the sun sets, it gets creepy. Petrified trees cast eerie shadows, and these guys are still digging, their lanterns flickering in the dark. It's like a bad horror movie, and I'm the unwilling side character. I'm not armed. Just got my radio and flashlight. Meanwhile, they've got shovels and picks, and they're clearly willing to use them. They start acting paranoid, thinking I'm trying to steal their mythical find. I'm just trying to do my job, but these guys are on a whole different wavelength. At some point, they unearth something. Not a mythical artifact, just an old, rusty box. But to them, it's the Holy Grail. They're ecstatic, shouting, hugging each other. I'm thinking, great, now they'll leave, right? Wrong. They decide I've seen too much. Suddenly, I'm the threat to their newfound treasure. They advance on me, shovels raised. I'm backing away, radio in hand, calling for help like my life depends on it, which, at that moment, it probably does. Backup arrives just in time. They scatter, disappearing into the park. I'm left there, heart pounding, thinking about how close I came to being a casualty of their treasure hunt. The box they found? Probably just some old miner's lunchbox or something. But to them, it was worth risking it all. After that, I can't look at the petrified forest the same way. It's not just ancient trees, it's got secrets buried in the dirt, secrets that some folks are willing to kill for, or at least, willing to bury a ranger alive for. Last summer, I was a ranger at Zion National Park, leading tours through the breathtaking canyons and red rock formations. It was a regular day, just like any other, when I took a group of tourists on a guided hike. The sun was beating down, and the air was dry. Among the tourists, there were a couple of guys who stood out. They seemed ordinary, wearing hiking gear and carrying backpacks, blending in with the rest of the group. They asked questions about the park's history, the rock formations, like any other curious visitor. But there was something off about the intensity in their eyes, like they were here for more than just sightseeing. As we trekked deeper into the canyons, the atmosphere changed. The tourists kept glancing at each other, exchanging quiet words. I shrugged it off, thinking maybe they were just a close-knit group of friends. But the unease in the air lingered. We reached a secluded area, a spot not many tourists frequented. That's when things took a turn. The two guys who had caught my attention earlier started whispering to each other, their eyes fixated on something unseen. I could feel the tension building. They began to veer away from the group, and I followed, curious and wary. They stopped near an ancient petroglyph on the canyon wall, a symbol I'd seen before but never paid much attention to. The guys seemed obsessed, tracing the lines with their fingers and muttering under their breath. One of them noticed me watching and shot me a cold stare. That's when I sensed trouble. They weren't here for a casual hike, they were on some kind of mission. The atmosphere turned thick with an unsettling energy. As we continued the hike, the tourists became increasingly erratic. They were fixated on the petroglyph, snapping pictures and talking in hushed tones. I tried to keep the group together, but it was like herding cats. The guys leading the strange mission were pulling people aside, pointing at the petroglyph, sharing some dark secret. I radioed for backup, feeling the weight of the situation. These tourists weren't here for the beauty of Zion, they were here for something ancient and malevolent. The tension in the air escalated, and I could see fear in the eyes of the other tourists who had no idea what was going on. As we reached a more open area, the two guys separated from the group and vanished into the shadows. I knew I had to act. I gathered the rest of the tourists and hurriedly led them back towards the park entrance, watching my surroundings for any signs of the mysterious pair. We made it back to the visitor center, and I informed the authorities about the strange encounter. They took it seriously, started an investigation, but the two guys were never found. The petroglyph they fixated on turned out to be connected to an ancient legend of a malevolent force hidden within the park. It left me shaken, thinking about what might have happened if I hadn't caught on. Zion, with all its beauty, held secrets that went beyond its red rock canyons. I left my ranger job soon after. The day started like any other. The sun lazily filtering through the towering trees, casting dappled shadows on the forest floor. I, a female ranger in Olympic National Park, took my routine patrol route, my keen eyes scanning the surroundings for any signs of trouble. As I moved deeper into the woods, the distant hum of machinery began to drown out the natural sounds of the park. My heart sank. This wasn't the first time I had encountered signs of illegal logging. The delicate balance of the ecosystem threatened by the relentless pursuit of profit. My footsteps quickened as I approached the source of the noise. The once pristine wilderness now bore the scars of chainsaws and heavy machinery. Stumps of ancient trees littered the ground like gravestones, and the air was thick with the acrid scent of freshly cut wood. I hid behind a large tree, surveying the scene ahead. A group of loggers, faces obscured by dirt and grime, worked feverishly to clear the forest. Anger bubbled within me as I recognized the insignias on their equipment, a local logging company known for exploiting protected areas. The urgency of the situation overwhelmed me. I needed evidence to expose their illegal activities. My radio crackled to life as I called for backup, my voice tense with frustration and fear. The response was static, a chilling reminder of the isolation within the vast expanse of the park. I approached cautiously, my heart pounding in my chest. The loggers, absorbed in their destructive task, remained oblivious to my presence. I needed to gather evidence, document their actions, and bring this environmental crime to light. As I stealthily moved between the trees, my foot caught on a hidden root, and I stumbled. A gasp escaped my lips, drawing the loggers' attention. Panic set in as I realized there was no turning back. They glared at me, hostility etched across their faces. "Who the hell are you?" one of them barked, his tone laced with aggression. I identified myself as a ranger, demanding they cease their illegal activities. Laughter erupted from the group, mocking my feeble attempt to stop them. One of the loggers stepped forward, a menacing glint in his eyes. "You're gonna regret sticking your nose where it doesn't belong, lady." His words sent shivers down my spine, but I stood my ground, fueled by determination to protect the park I loved. Suddenly, a realization hit me. These loggers weren't just profit-driven criminals. They were part of a larger conspiracy, a network exploiting the land for motives beyond simple greed. The air became charged with a palpable threat, and the once serene forest now felt like a battlefield. I fumbled for my radio again, desperation in my voice as I called for reinforcements. Silence echoed back, amplifying the gravity of my predicament. The loggers advanced, their movements predatory, and I retreated, my mind racing for a strategy. As the distance between us closed, I stumbled upon a hidden cave entrance, our refuge in the face of danger. I darted inside, the darkness enveloping me. The sound of footsteps grew louder, and I pressed myself against the cold rock, breath caught in my throat. The loggers, unaware of my hiding place, passed by. Relief flooded through me, but it was short-lived. My sanctuary revealed a hidden truth. The cave led deeper into the heart of the park, a labyrinth and network that could shield the conspirators from justice. With a heavy heart, I realized that exposing the conspiracy required more than confronting the loggers. It demanded navigating a treacherous maze, where danger lurked in the shadows, and the fate of Olympic National Park hung in the balance. As I ventured further into the cave, the air thick with uncertainty, I knew that the battle to protect the park was far from over. The darkness ahead mirrored the daunting challenges I would face, and the echoing footsteps behind me whispered a chilling truth. The struggle against those who sought to exploit nature's beauty was a fight that had just begun. Sunlight filtered through the towering pines, casting long shadows on the forest floor. My boots crunched on the dry leaves as I followed the well-trodden path. Little did I know, this ordinary day would unravel into a web of unsettling discoveries. The rumors had circulated among the rangers, a reclusive individual living off the grid deep within the park. Today, I was tasked with investigating these claims, a routine check to ensure the delicate balance of the ecosystem remained undisturbed. As I ventured further into the wilderness, the familiar sounds of the forest surrounded me, the distant calls of birds, the rustle of leaves in the breeze. Yet, an inexplicable unease settled in my gut, a subtle shift in the atmosphere that hinted at the impending disturbance. Following the coordinates given, I navigated through dense foliage until a clearing revealed a ramshackle cabin. Smoke curled lazily from the chimney, indicating recent habitation. The door creaked as I cautiously pushed it open, announcing my presence to the hidden occupant. Inside, the air was heavy with the scent of burning wood. My eyes adjusted to the dim light, revealing a cluttered interior. A worn-out table, stacks of canned food, and a makeshift bed adorned with tattered blankets, signs of a life lived on the fringes of society. I called out, my voice echoing through the silence. No response. The cabin seemed deserted, but a nagging feeling urged me to delve deeper. As I inspected the room, I noticed a trapdoor beneath a worn rug. My curiosity overcame me, and I pulled it open. The stairwell descended into darkness, and a flickering light below hinted at a hidden chamber. Hesitation knotted me, but duty compelled me forward. The air grew colder as I descended, and the echo of my footsteps intensified the suspense. The hidden chamber unveiled a chilling secret. walls adorned with newspaper clippings, maps, and photographs, a chaotic collage mapping a twisted obsession. My pulse quickened as the evidence pointed to a dark fixation on the park's visitors, their habits meticulously documented. A realization hit me like a freight train. The reclusive individual wasn't just living off the grid, they were monitoring those who crossed their path. The implications were ominous, a breach of privacy escalating into a perilous invasion. I retraced my steps, the weight of the discovery pressing on me. Emerging back into the daylight, I scanned the surroundings, a paranoia settling in. The once peaceful forest now harbored a hidden menace, and I couldn't shake the feeling of unseen eyes watching my every move. I decided to wait near the cabin, hoping to confront the mysterious occupant upon their return. Hours passed, and the shadows grew longer. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting the forest into an inky darkness. Just as doubt crept in, a figure emerged from the trees. The reclusive individual, clad in tattered clothes, froze at the sight of me. Fear flickered in their eyes, and an unspoken tension hung in the air. I demanded an explanation, my voice steady despite the unease gripping my chest. They stammered, attempting to justify their actions, a misguided attempt to protect the park from perceived threats. But their rationalization couldn't mask the unsettling truth, an obsession that blurred the line between vigilantism and malevolence. As I radioed for backup, the stranger's demeanor shifted. The fear transformed into defiance, and a malicious glint gleamed in their eyes. It became clear, the danger wasn't just in the shadows of the forest, it was standing before me, a person harboring a sinister agenda. The arrival of fellow rangers brought a semblance of safety, but the encounter left a lingering fear. The reclusive individual was apprehended, their unsettling obsession exposed. The forest, once a sanctuary, now held echoes of a disturbing presence that had lurked undetected for far too long. As I walked away from the clearing, the distant hoot of an owl and the rustle of leaves became a haunting refrain. The encounter with the reclusive stranger had pierced the tranquility of Glacier National Park. I'm patrolling, flashlight in hand, when I hear voices deep in the cave. At first, I think it's just tourists, but the tone is off. It's hushed, like they're hiding something. So, I follow the sound, curious but also kind of uneasy. As I get deeper, I notice these flickering candles. Not the usual touristy stuff, more like a creepy ritual vibe. My gut clenches. I know I should call for backup, but curiosity gets the better of me. Maybe it's just some history buffs doing their thing. I turn a corner, and there they are, a group of people in old-timey clothes, huddled around a makeshift altar. My skin crawls. They're muttering something, words I can't quite catch. But it's not a history lesson, it's something darker. Then, I see it, an ancient-looking artifact on the altar. My heart pounds. These folks are up to something beyond the usual touristy stuff. The cave's got history, sure, but this feels like they're tapping into some dark secret. I hide behind a rock, trying not to make a sound. They start chanting, their voices echoing through the cave. I'm not into this supernatural stuff, but the air changes, gets heavier. It's like the cave itself is holding its breath. They raise the artifact, and I catch glimpses of symbols etched into it. My heart races. This isn't some innocent history club. They're into something sinister, something that's been hidden in the depths of Mammoth Cave. Then, one of them spots me. Panic sets in. I bolt, flashlight swinging wildly. They chase after me, yelling something about protecting the secret. I don't stick around to find out what that means. I navigate the maze-like passages, my breath echoing in the darkness. Fear gnaws at me. These historians, or whatever they are relentless. They're closing in, and I'm just a ranger with a flashlight. I duck into a side passage, hoping to lose them. My heart's in my throat. The cave, once a familiar haven, becomes a claustrophobic nightmare. Every echo, every sound, it's them getting closer. I find a hiding spot, holding my breath. They pass by, muttering about preserving the secret, about the sacrifice they need. Sacrifice? I shudder, trying to make sense of it. This isn't what I signed up for as a ranger. I decide to get the heck out of there, radio for backup. But as I make my way back, I hear their voices again. They're in the main chamber, performing some ritual. The air is charged, and I don't want to know what they're conjuring. I reach the entrance, frantic, ready to spill the beans to my fellow rangers. But there's this weird silence outside. No crickets, no rustling leaves. It's like the whole forest is holding its breath. Then I see them, the historians, standing in a circle, staring at me with cold eyes. I freeze. They know I've seen too much. I fumble for my radio, but it's dead. They did something to it. They start chanting again, low and ominous. My limbs go numb. I can't move. The cave, the forest, it's closing in on me. The historians, they're summoning something, and I'm caught in the middle. As they chant, I feel this pressure, like the air itself is squeezing the life out of me. Shadows dance around the cave, and I'm paralyzed, helpless. The darkness consumes everything. Then they stop. The cave returns to normal, but the atmosphere is still heavy. The historians vanish into the shadows, leaving me there, shaking to my core. Ranger in Big Bend National Park. Normal patrols, desert vast and quiet. One day, stumbled upon something off, a spot not in the usual maps. Decided to check, maybe some lost hikers. Sun scorching, sweat clinging to my shirt. Found a hidden clearing. Men there, busy. Bags, machinery, smelled chemicals. Realized it, a drug operation. Panic hit. Tried to retreat quiet, but they spotted me. Faces turned my way, ice cold. No escape. Confrontation started. Demanded explanation. They laughed, said I stumbled into their business. Fear settled in. Realized how isolated we were. Desert swallowed sound, made confrontation eerie. Tried radioing for help, but no signal. Leader, grizzled man, stepped forward. Threatened to make me vanish. Scared, but stood my ground. Told them to leave. They refused, said too much at stake. Felt trapped, nowhere to run. Their eyes, dangerous glint. Knew they'd do anything to protect their operation. Tried to negotiate, but they scoffed. A tense standoff. Hands twitched near weapons. Desert wind carried tension. Radio crackled, faint signal. Back up on the way. Bought time, but could feel their impatience. Leader whispered, dark threats. Sweating, heart pounding, wished I never found this. Backup arrived, lights in the distance. Tension spiked. Men hesitated, outnumbered now. Confrontation intensified. Yells, orders, chaos. Desert night turned battlefield. Fought to keep them restrained, but their desperation grew. Guns drawn, threats shouted. Backup called for more units, situation escalating. Fear, adrenaline, mixed in the air. Leader cornered, desperation in his eyes. Whispered, pleaded, said they had families. Forced into it. Felt a flicker of sympathy, but danger too real. Can't let them escape. Tense moments passed. Backup swarmed in, guns drawn. Arrests made. Operation dismantled. Desert returned to silence. Faces of those men haunted me. Dark side of the quiet desert, where danger hides in the vastness. Ranger in Joshua Tree National Park. Days usually quiet, desert vast and hot. Came across a guy, lab coat, strange equipment. Looked official but felt off. Asked what he was doing, claimed to be a researcher. Told him he needed permits. Ignored me, kept setting up. Tried radioing for info, no response. Frustration set in, something not right. Asked again, he smirked, said it's confidential. And unease settled. Desert silence, his equipment humming. Asked to leave, he refused. Nightfall, things got weirder. Glowing lights, strange noises. People in lab coats emerged from the shadows. Fear kicked in. What were they doing here? Confronted them, demanded answers. Leader, the guy I first saw, explained. Unethical experiments, human subjects. Shock hit. Protested, said it's wrong. They laughed, said they needed results. Realized I was the subject. Panic, desperation. Tried to escape, but they grabbed me. Strapped to a table, needles, wires. Cold lab, sterile. Fear made my heart race. Couldn't comprehend what was happening. Experiments started. Pain, confusion. Tried to resist, but they were relentless. Pleaded, begged. No empathy in their eyes. Just data, results. Darkness encroached, mind slipping. Days turned into nights. No sense of time. Experiments escalated, body weakened. Felt like a lab rat. Eyes of the scientists devoid of humanity. Just cold calculations. Thoughts blurred, sanity slipping. Couldn't escape, trapped in this nightmare. Desperation settled, hope flickered out. In the desert, no one could hear my screams. Finally, they stopped. Released me, battered, broken. Desert night welcomed me back. Limped away, stumbled through the vastness. Their laughter echoed, haunting. Reached civilization, reported what happened. Investigation started, but no closure. Physical scars healed, but the memories lingered. Left the job, left the desert. Couldn't shake the feeling of being a pawn in their twisted game. The day started like any other routine patrol in Sequoia and Kings Canyon National Parks. Sunlight filtered through the towering trees, dappling the forest floor with patches of warmth. As a ranger, my job was to ensure the safety of visitors and protect the delicate balance of the ecosystem. Little did I know, this day would lead me to a confrontation with a group whose extreme beliefs challenged the very essence of the park. Rumors had circulated about a survivalist group setting up camp deep within the park. My assignment was to investigate, a routine check to maintain order in this haven of nature. As I ventured into the dense woods, a sense of foreboding settled over me, an unspoken warning that this investigation might unveil more than I bargained for. Navigating the labyrinth of ancient trees, I stumbled upon their camp, hidden in a remote clearing. Tents and makeshift structures dotted the landscape, camouflaged to blend seamlessly with the surroundings. My unease intensified as I noticed symbols and flags adorned with cryptic insignias, signaling a belief system that transcended the ordinary. Approaching the camp cautiously, I observed the group engaged in activities that raised eyebrows: survival drills, unconventional weaponry training, and fervent discussions about their beliefs. The atmosphere hummed with an intensity that went beyond typical outdoor enthusiasts. I identified myself as a ranger, my voice cutting through the air, and was met with hostile stares. Their leader, a charismatic figure with an air of authority, approached. He spoke eloquently about self-reliance, disdain for societal norms, and a belief in their divine right to live off the land. I explained the park regulations, emphasizing the need to preserve the natural environment. They scoffed at the rules, dismissing them as constraints imposed by a corrupt system. Tensions escalated as I insisted on their compliance, and their fervor turned into defiance. In the clash between their extreme beliefs and park regulations, a dangerous standoff unfolded. The leader argued that the park was theirs to conquer, a new frontier for their radical ideals. As a ranger committed to upholding the sanctity of the park, I couldn't allow their actions to jeopardize the delicate balance of this natural sanctuary. The confrontation reached a boiling point. The survivalist group, armed with a conviction bordering on fanaticism, refused to yield. It became clear that reasoning with them was futile. As I radioed for backup, their disdain for authority manifested in unsettling glares and veiled threats. The arrival of fellow rangers amplified the tension. The survivalist group, outnumbered but unyielding, retreated into the shadows of the forest. The standoff ended without immediate resolution, leaving a lingering fear that their extreme beliefs could escalate into a threat against the park and its visitors. In the days that followed, a delicate dance unfolded between the survivalist group and the park authorities. Their presence cast a shadow over the tranquility of Sequoia and Kings Canyon National Parks, challenging the very essence of preservation and conservation. As a ranger tasked with maintaining order and protecting the park, I grappled with the realization that some threats didn't originate from wildfires or poachers. The clash with this survivalist group was a stark reminder that the struggle to preserve nature extended beyond the visible perils, delving into the realm of ideologies that could irreversibly scar the pristine beauty of Sequoia and Kings Canyon. Routine patrol one day, stumbled on something dark. A group, not tourists, handling animals, cages, crates. Smelled trouble. Approached quietly, saw a rare species in distress. Traffickers. Panic set in. Tried to radio for backup, no signal. Stuck in the wilderness with these criminals. Needed evidence, so I hid, watched, heart pounding. Figured out their routine. Nightfall, they'd move the animals. Stealth mode, tracked them through the trees. Fear crept in, not just for me, but for those innocent creatures caught in this mess. Trail led to a secluded area, surrounded by men with greed in their eyes. Animals in cages, fear in their eyes. Leader, gruff guy, barking orders. Felt my blood boil, but had to play it cool. Couldn't risk the animals or myself. Waited for the right moment. Spotted an opening, made my move. Grabbed evidence, camera snapped shots. They heard, chaos erupted. Chasing through the dark woods, adrenaline pumping. Radioed for backup, distant voices crackled. Running, darkness closing in. Couldn't let them escape. Fear and determination fueled each step. Stumbled upon their operation, crates of animals, ready for the black market. Backup arrived, lights slicing through the darkness. Confrontation intense. Traffickers fought hard, desperate. Fear for the animals and for my own safety. One guy lunged at me, struggle in the dirt. Backup restrained the rest. Tense moments passed, animals whimpering in the background. Finally got them all in cuffs. Investigation revealed the extent of their operation. Rare species headed for the black market. Realized how close we came to losing something irreplaceable. Wildlife, the heart of the mountains, saved from the hands of greed. Case closed, but the memories stayed. The struggle in the dark woods, the fear, the determination. Left a job later, haunted by the thought of what could have been. The quiet beauty of the Rockies marred by the harsh reality that some would exploit it for profit. Ranger duty at Mesa Verde National Park. Loved the ancient history, the ruins. One day, found something off. Evidence of archaeologists in areas they shouldn't be. Thought maybe just amateurs, but uneasy feeling gnawed at me. Started snooping around, quiet, under the radar. Late one evening, caught them in the act. Not digging, not preserving, but something different. Rituals, weird symbols. Fear gripped my gut. Tried to snap pics, document their activities. Hid behind the rocks, heart pounding. Knew I shouldn't be here, but couldn't let this slide. Whispers in the dark, eerie chanting. Felt like a trespasser in my own park. Confrontation time. Stepped out, demanded explanations. Their eyes, wide, guilty. Tried to dismiss it, said it was research. Couldn't buy it. The air thick with tension, like a storm about to break. Told them to stop. Forbidden rituals, messing with ancient sites. They scoffed, said it's for a greater understanding. Felt outnumbered, their eyes dark with defiance. Stood my ground, fear hidden behind authority. Later, found out more about their background. Obsessed with ancient cultures, not just studying but trying to channel some power. Felt like they were playing with fire. Called in the higher-ups, needed support. Nights grew tense. Saw them watching, whispers in the shadows. Knew I was in their crosshairs. Felt paranoia crawling on my skin. Didn't want to be the enemy, just wanted them to stop their forbidden rituals. Late one night, they confronted me. Faces masked, intentions unclear. Stood my ground, radioed for backup. They laughed, said no one could save me. Fear settled, heart pounding. Backup arrived, confrontation intense. Faced off in the dark, symbols glowing in the moonlight. Told them to leave, pack up their forbidden rituals. They resisted, defiant. But the authority of the park was on my side. Eventually, they backed down, vanishing into the night. The ruins, once a place of awe, now tainted by the dark secrets I stumbled upon. Left a job later, couldn't shake the feeling of eyes watching, whispers in the shadows. Mesa Verde, scarred by the intrusion of those who sought power in forbidden rituals. Being a ranger in Great Basin National Park meant days filled with routine checks and encounters with nature lovers. However, one sunny day, routine took a chilling turn. My walkie-talkie buzzed with reports of suspicious activity involving bird watchers near the ancient bristlecone pines. Heading towards the reported location, I saw a group huddled in intense discussion. They weren't your typical bird watchers. Binoculars and notepads were accompanied by a strange determination. Approaching cautiously, I inquired about their activities, trying to discern the reason behind their unsettling obsession. Their leader, an intense man with disheveled hair, explained their mission. They believed a rare bird species nested deep within the park, a species unknown to science. As a ranger, I was accustomed to enthusiasts, but this group's fervor felt unnatural, a disturbance in the park's delicate balance. The leader claimed the bird held the key to ecological revelations and that their quest was a noble pursuit. However, their methods betrayed an unsettling obsession. They trespassed into restricted zones, disrupting habitats and disregarding the park's preservation principles. I attempted to reason with them, emphasizing the importance of preserving the ecosystem. But their obsession surpassed reason. They spoke in riddles, convinced their actions were a sacred mission to unlock nature's secrets. Days turned into a tense game of cat and mouse. The bird watchers, fueled by an unrelenting passion, dodged park regulations, driven to extremes to unveil the mysteries they believed the rare bird held. They camped in forbidden areas, upsetting the natural order of the park. As their obsession intensified, so did my concern. Their presence jeopardized the well-being of the park's inhabitants, disturbing the fragile ecosystem. I found myself caught between a duty to protect the park and a group whose obsession bordered on madness. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, I received a report of a disturbance in the restricted research zone. Racing against time, I arrived to find the birdwatchers setting up camp. It wasn't just a camp, it was a makeshift base, complete with surveillance equipment and makeshift blinds. The leader approached, eyes gleaming with an unsettling determination. He spoke cryptically about the imminent revelation the bird would bring. I tried reasoning once more, but my words fell on deaf ears. Their obsession had reached a point where they saw me as an obstacle to their sacred quest. As night descended, a surreal atmosphere settled over the park. The bird watchers, driven by their obsession, were blind to the consequences of their actions. They moved through the shadows, infringing on the park's sanctuary in pursuit of their elusive prize. A confrontation loomed. The eerie silence of the night was shattered by whispers and furtive movements. The leader, now consumed by his quest, issued veiled threats against anyone who stood in their way. I radioed for backup, realizing this encounter could escalate into something beyond my control. The backup arrived, and a tense standoff ensued. The bird watchers, now outnumbered, reluctantly retreated. As they disappeared into the darkness, their obsession remained embedded in the park's fabric, a dark undercurrent threatening the delicate balance of Great Basin National Park. In the aftermath, I grappled with the realization that sometimes the threats to a national park didn't come in the form of poachers or vandals. The obsession of these bird watchers, their distorted mission, left an indelible mark on the serene landscape, a stark reminder that even those who claim to love nature can, in their obsession, become unwitting destroyers of the very thing they seek to understand. Worked as a ranger in Glacier Bay National Park. Peaceful days, stunning landscapes. One day, stumbled upon a group of survivalists. Tents pitched, smoke rising. Felt uneasy, but couldn't pinpoint why. Approached, asked if they had proper permits. Leader, fanatical eyes, claimed they didn't need any. Said the park belonged to them. Alarm bells in my head, but no immediate danger. Days passed, their presence grew. Cut down trees, set traps. Felt the wilderness slipping away. Confronted them again, asked them to leave. Leader, eyes blazing, said they were the true stewards of the land. Tension rose. Nightfall, heard whispers around my cabin. Felt like prey. Worried glances from fellow rangers, shared concern. Leader and his followers seemed to be everywhere. Confronted them again, demanded they respect the park. They laughed, called it their destiny. Realized these guys weren't just camping, they believed the park was theirs. Fear sank in. One night, they surrounded my cabin. Shouts, threats. Couldn't radio for help, communication jammed. Trapped, fear taking over. Knew I had to stand my ground. Confrontation escalated. Leader, charismatic and mad, fueled their fanaticism. They demanded I leave, claimed I was the intruder. No reasoning with them. Stood my ground, heart racing, sweat cold. Backup finally arrived, lights cutting through the dark. Confrontation intensified. Leader defiant, followers aggressive. The park, my haven, now a battleground. Backup held them off, but leader's fanaticism burned bright. Threats lingered. Nights became sleepless, always wondering if they were lurking in the shadows. One day, found a warning carved into a tree. The park would be theirs, they vowed. Fear settled in. Realized I was dealing with something beyond reason. The beauty of Glacier Bay now marred by the threat that lingered. I used to be a ranger in Langolesti, Elias National Park. It's a vast, wild place with mountains that reach up to the sky and valleys that stretch for miles. My job was to patrol the park, making sure everything was in order. But one day, things took a turn for the worse. There were rumors circulating about gold in the park, and it didn't take long for a group of prospectors to show up. They were a rough-looking bunch, with worn-out clothes and eyes that gleamed with greed. I remember the first time I saw them, deep in the heart of the wilderness. The trees stood tall and silent as the prospectors set up their camp. They talked in hushed tones, plotting their next move. It didn't take me long to realize that they were here for one thing, to strike it rich. The wilderness, once untouched and pristine, was about to become a battleground. I approached them cautiously, trying to reason with them. I explained the importance of preserving the natural beauty of the park, but they weren't having any of it. Their eyes flickered with determination as they spoke about the gold that lay hidden beneath the soil. As the days passed, the tension in the air thickened. I could feel the wilderness itself holding its breath, waiting to see what would happen. The prospectors grew more desperate, digging deeper and tearing apart the land in their search for wealth. One night, as I patrolled the outskirts of their camp, I heard voices in the darkness. I hid behind a cluster of trees and listened as they argued about their dwindling supplies and the elusive gold. The prospectors were turning on each other, their greed driving them to the edge. The next morning, I woke to the sound of gunshots echoing through the mountains. Fear clenched my chest as I rushed towards the source of the noise. What I saw made my blood run cold. The prospectors had turned on each other, each one fighting for a share of the gold they believed was rightfully theirs. I tried to intervene, to stop the madness, but they were beyond reason. The pristine wilderness had become a battlefield, with the prospectors tearing through the once untouched landscape in a frenzy of greed and desperation. Survival instincts kicked in as I navigated the chaos, dodging bullets and desperate hands reaching for anything of value. The once serene wilderness now echoed with the sounds of violence, a stark contrast to the natural symphony that once filled the air. In the midst of the chaos, I stumbled upon a wounded prospector. His eyes met mine, a mix of pain and regret reflecting in them. He whispered about the curse of gold, how it had turned the pursuit of wealth into a nightmare. It was a chilling moment, realizing the destructive power of human greed. I managed to escape the madness, leaving the prospectors to their fate. As I looked back at the park, I couldn't shake the feeling that something precious had been lost forever. The once untouched wilderness was scarred, and the echoes of greed lingered in the air like a haunting ghost. I was a ranger in Zion National Park, surrounded by towering red cliffs and serene landscapes. My days were filled with routine patrols, ensuring the safety of both visitors and the park's delicate ecosystem. But one day, something changed, and the tranquility of the park gave way to an unsettling darkness. There had been whispers among the staff about a group of wilderness meditators who had set up camp deep in the heart of the park. Intrigued and slightly skeptical, I decided to check it out. As I approached their makeshift camp, the air seemed charged with an unusual energy, a feeling that crawled under my skin. The meditators were a diverse group, sitting in silence with closed eyes amidst the rustling leaves and the distant hum of nature. It seemed harmless at first, just people seeking serenity in the wilderness. However, as I observed from a distance, a strange sensation lingered in the air, like a static charge waiting to erupt. Days passed, and the atmosphere around the meditators grew more ominous. The once vibrant flora seemed to wither, and the animals that once roamed freely were scarce. It was as if the very essence of the park was being drained away, leaving behind an unsettling void. One evening, as the sun dipped below the red cliffs, I approached the meditators cautiously. Their eyes, usually closed in contemplation, now held a vacant, distant look. They spoke of tapping into the energy of the earth, but their words carried an unsettling weight that sent shivers down my spine. Night fell, and a darkness unlike any other settled over the camp. I felt a cold breeze, and shadows danced between the trees. The once calm night sounds of the wilderness were replaced by an eerie silence. I sensed that something had been unleashed, something that defied the natural order of the park. Unable to shake off the growing unease, I decided to investigate further. The meditators, now consumed by their practices, seemed oblivious to the changes they had set in motion. I stumbled upon a hidden ritual site, adorned with symbols I couldn't decipher. The air felt heavy, and a sense of dread washed over me. As I stood there, paralyzed by an inexplicable fear, I witnessed a surge of dark energy emanating from the earth. It twisted and contorted, snaking through the roots of the ancient trees and suffocating the life out of the once thriving ecosystem. The park's delicate balance was unraveling at an alarming pace. I knew I had to intervene, to stop whatever malevolent force had been awakened. Panic set in as I confronted the meditators, pleading with them to cease their practices. Their vacant stares only deepened, and it became clear that they were no longer in control of the dark energy they had unleashed. Chaos erupted as the very fabric of the park seemed to unravel. The once silent night echoed with distorted whispers, and shadows took on a life of their own. The meditators, now lost to the dark energy, became mere vessels for an ancient force that sought to consume everything in its path. Desperation fueled my actions as I scrambled to disrupt the ritual site, hoping to sever the connection between the meditators and the malevolent energy. The air crackled with unseen forces, and a primal fear gripped my every step. In a final act of defiance, I disrupted the ritual, and an otherworldly scream echoed through the night. The meditators convulsed, their eyes briefly regaining clarity before succumbing to unconsciousness. The dark energy recoiled, retreating back into the depths of the earth. As dawn broke, I surveyed the park, a battlefield of spiritual turmoil. The once vibrant flora showed signs of recovery, but the scars of that night lingered. The meditators, now unconscious and seemingly free from the dark influence, were a haunting reminder of the fragile balance between the natural and the supernatural. Zion National Park, a sanctuary of nature's beauty, had faced a threat not from ghosts or creatures but from the unintended consequences of human actions. The encounter with those wilderness meditators was a chilling reminder that even the pursuit of inner peace could unleash forces beyond our understanding, threatening the very essence of the places we hold dear.